All right, here we go. Let's do the intro. Welcome everyone to the very first episode of the Reconnect to Self podcast with Tracey Quayle. I am your host, Scott. I'm also Tracey's husband. Hi, babe.
Hi.
I'm a filmmaker by trade. Tracey is a therapist, but together we have co-facilitated Reconnect Self Retreats, which we run here in Perth, which is in Western Australia, for those of you who don't know. So today is our first episode. I wanted to sort of outline what the aim of this thing was, right? And what I came up with is helping people rediscover what brings them joy. What do you think we're trying to get out of this podcast?
Just sharing tips that people could do in their everyday lives that don't require a lot of time, energy or money, that they could add different things in that give them little moments of happiness to balance out their lives.
Okay. Who would it be for? I know this little doggy. We should probably introduce him actually, since he's in from the beginning. Who is this?
This is Lenny, and he is our 4-year-old cavoodle. And he is, I don't want to offend you by saying the love of my life, but he's definitely up there.
He brings you a lot of joy.
He brings me a lot of joy.
All right.
You can see by the way that I'm cradling of how much joy he brings to me when I cuddle him like this.
I see, every single day, and with our kids as well. Why did we start this podcast? What are we trying to do?
We want to bring just tips and information to people that they can add into their lives so that they can add more balance, more self-care, more nurturing for themselves, because these are all the things that people need to be able to regulate their nervous system. And that's really important because in a world where everything's so busy and fast-paced, we can easily, just be running off our reactions and not really slowing down enough to check in with ourselves to be happy with our responses. So we want to slow everything down enough that we are responding, not reacting. And some of these self-care practices will be a way of people being able to slow everything down and come back to a calm, regulated space for themselves.
Okay. So is it for people who are like just constantly on the go, giving their energy to other people pleasers, that kind of?
Absolutely, yes. But it doesn't even have to be as severe as that. Definitely, they would be ones that benefit a lot. But even people that, think they're looking after themselves, but when they actually stop and look at it, they go, well, actually, I don't really, yes, I might go get my hair done and my nails done, or some of these things that are more about appearance, but they're not actually doing things that, bring them stillness and bring them into their center where they can see kind of what their preferences are and things that, they enjoy.
Okay. I hear that sentence a bit, and I think I know what it means, but what does it mean when someone comes back to their center? So
the way that I describe it is when we wake up in the morning, unless we've had a nightmare or a bad sleep, we're kind of calm, we're regulated, we're in our center. But through the morning, we'll be pulled out of our centre by, kids fighting when they're getting ready for school or traffic being bad on the way to work. But all of these things will kind of take us out of that zen, calm place that we might have been in that morning and have us more in our reactions, to what we're experiencing in life. So the more that we can do these things to slow everything down and actually bring us back into what we call our rest and digest system, which is our regulated nervous system, then we're able to respond to our day. We're not just being reactive to everything. We're calmer as we move throughout our day. And lots of people don't have these skills. They don't know how to bring themselves back to their centre. They just kind of are reactive all day, feel like they've had a busy day and maybe come home, have a glass of wine and plonk on the couch.
And I was probably one of those people, would you say?
Yeah.
I don't think I became an adult with all of these skills on how to have good self-care.
No, you definitely didn't.
and so how would you have described, I know we didn't, this is a tangent, but we may as well go there. People can get to know us a bit better. How would you have described my self-care, I don't know, 5 years ago?
Poor. Very poor.
Why was it poor?
Because you just didn't look after yourself. So you would be sick and you work for yourself and you would be still sitting at your office plugging away and trying to just reply to emails or get some extra bit of work or an extra pound of flesh out of yourself. And I used to think, why are you doing that? I get it if you have a deadline and you really have to push through sometimes, but when you're just doing that to get your productivity out yourself, rather than taking time and giving yourself that chance to rest and recover from not feeling very well, or even if it's not physical, even if just emotionally that day you felt like it was a tough day, you never gave yourself a break.
No, that's true. And so for everyone getting to know us, I am getting better, would you say?
You definitely are getting better, yeah.
Yeah.
Now you do things like, years ago you would take a nap during the day to get your energy back, and then slowly I started getting you to do meditations, and you started liking that, and you could see that was a good benefit. And then we eventually made you switch to, not made, but encouraged you to switch to breathworks, which gave you lots more energy because you were bringing in the oxygen and oxygenating your system and giving yourself that boost for the rest of your afternoon, rather than reaching for something that might have given you that little energy hit.
Yeah. Look, I've loved it, and that's why I'm excited to host this thing and sort of share it with people so that they can, I guess, get some of the benefits that I've been getting and all the people that you work with. And I've realised we've probably been going for 5 minutes and we've been talking about me. We should probably talk about you. So tell us a little bit about you and your practice and how long you've been working in your own private practice, but you also, were a therapist counsellor before that. Tell us a little bit about your history.
So previously, when I used to work for an agency, it was an agency that worked with teenagers at risk of self-harm, depression and suicide, so pretty heavy stuff. And I guess that gave me a really good amount of experience working one-on-one with a difficult client group, because teenagers can be hard to work with. Their motivation for change is pretty low. Yeah. They might just want to complain about things a lot. So I did enjoy my time, working for that agency, but I must admit that ever since working for myself for the last, it's coming up for 14 years in October, I have absolutely loved it. I think the freedom of being able to work with clients that I choose, being able to use the kind of modalities and techniques and things that I resonate with, rather than being limited by maybe agency policies or whatever, being able to practice in a way that feels authentic to me has been really enjoyable. So yeah, for the last 14 years, I've been running my own private practice, and in the last 5 years I've also been doing relationship retreats with my business partner, who's actually one of my really good friends, so that's been really lovely. And another therapist we've brought on board because we needed the extra help is also one of my really good friends. So to create a business where I get to work with two of my really good friends and help people and do everything I love is kind of like a dream, really.
Shout out to Tina and Bron.
Yes.
If they happen to watch this, which maybe they will.
Yeah.
Well, the other weird thing is that we're literally sitting in a dining room / lounge room / kitchen filming a podcast, and it's considered we're working.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what type of people do you like working with? Like, who are your favorite? I know you can't have favorites, but what are the...
I do have favorites. I do have favorites. I think my favorite is when... I don't like them starting off this way, and that's maybe why I have such passion for it. But when people come in and I can see straight away that their self-esteem is really low, the way they care for themselves or talk to themselves is really, not kind, they are my favourite people, because as soon as they start paying attention to their self-talk, changing the way that they speak to themselves, adding in some of this, self-care and nurturing that I always am always banging on about, they have such good shifts and changes, and that gives me energy. That literally gives me energy when I can see someone, change before my eyes. Sometimes it can happen in one session. Sometimes I can see someone from the beginning of a session to the end have this shift in when they realise how poorly they've been treating themselves, and it almost like smacks them in the face when they realise how badly they've been speaking to themselves, and they want to change that straight away. For some people, for other people, it might take a bit of a longer sort of process and journey. But for some people, it can be as quick as one session. You can see significant shifts. So that's really exciting. So they definitely.
And I guess that's what we're trying to do with this show, right? Is give people some of that advice that they would get if they came and sat down with you.
Yeah.
One-on-one.
Yeah.
But this is just on a bigger scale, and we can help more people.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, it's hard when you get so many inquiries and you have to turn them away and refer them out to other people who you also know have long wait lists. That I want to give people information that can start them on their journey now, like not waiting for an appointment, not having to, get in with a therapist or save up money if they financially can't afford to get that kind of support. But there's so many podcasts and things on Instagram and social media where people are always giving lots of tips and advice, and there's heaps of information out there. So, I want to be part of that as well, giving people the stuff that I think is the gold, that they don't need to come in and see me in the office. They can get it from other forums.
And we started a newsletter.
Well, that's a good way to, give out some tips and some things that people could do in their everyday lives that don't have to cost a lot of money or time or energy. It's just little baby steps. I think that's the key. I want people to understand that you don't need to go and book a breathwork class that's going to take you 2 hours or cost you however much money. Like, there's stuff on YouTube. There's things that are available in our everyday lives that anyone can access.
And if people do want to sign up to our mailing list, traceyquayle.com. We've just built the website. You can sign up to the mailing list there. Mm-hmm. Should we tell people a little bit about us? Like, how do you... I've written down a couple of questions. The first one, we can give the short version of this, but how did we meet?
We met at a fancy dress party. It was one of my best friend's colleagues from work was having a housewarming party, and you were friends with that friend, and you were DJing, wearing a Robin outfit.
Batman.
His friend was
the TV show Batman and Robin, so old school Robin.
So imagine tights,
not sexy, not sexy movie star Robin. It was
lycra. I'd come from a concert, so my outfit was not really that exciting. It was. No, I think I went as a devil. I was just a devil.
Yeah. You had normal clothes and then a set of horns on your head.
Well, the theme was saints and sinners.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how Batman and Robin. I know my best friend Kirk was dressed as Batman. I don't know how we got that in.
Maybe saints. Saints.
Yeah, doing good.
Yeah.
I just like the costume. So I was playing, and then I was not playing the music to your liking, and then you came and requested some songs that I did not have.
Yes. He had none of those songs. He knew he had none of those songs, but he still handed me a file of blank CDs and said, look through that. Which
blank as in old school burned CDs, not blank as in nothing on them. Yes.
Yeah, but no titles for me to look at. No.
Well, it did keep you at the DJ booth longer, and that worked. And then we ended up chatting.
That's true.
Yeah, and then we went on a date, and the rest is history. What made you fall in love with me?
Funnily enough, it was your writing.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So we were emailing a lot, and so I remember. I would ask you questions and over email, and you would respond, and the way that you would respond would make me laugh, and I would look forward to those emails because they were interesting and they were nice. They made me feel good. So I think it was your witty writing style and the way that you could make me laugh. That was probably one of the biggest things.
Yeah, and you make me laugh. So your sense of humour, and I think you're one of the kindest people I've met.
No, thanks, babe.
And I knew I could pick that up straight away, and I think that's what really drew me to you. And now, how many children do we have?
3.
And where are they now?
Thankfully, they're all at school.
Yeah. So we have to record our shows in the middle of the day because otherwise this house is
loud
and hectic.
And this one doesn't help.
No.
With all of his barking.
That's literally why you have to hold him, because if he was on the floor, this show would not happen.
Well, he won't let me not have him on my lap.
Yeah. So our kids, we have a boy, he's 14.
Nearly 15.
Nearly 15. A girl who's 12 turning. She's going to be 13 in a couple of months. And then our little baby who is 8 turning 9. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit about us. So the first few episodes, so obviously you mentioned at the top of the show that we run these retreats and we call them Reconnect to Self. Mm-hmm. And we thought a good way to start this podcast is the first few episodes we'll pick some of the stuff that we do on the retreat. So I think I was looking through our booklet and I thought, well, the very first section is about getting to know yourself. That seems relevant in this situation. I guess my first question is, why is knowing yourself so important?
Because if you know yourself, you then can know how to take care of yourself in all different situations. And I think that people don't really know that. I think we're so used to being accommodating or being easygoing. And so when people ask us, where would we like to go for dinner or what would we like to do on the weekend, we can often be very, very flexible, but it's almost to the point where we're then not knowing who we are and what our preferences would be. We can say, oh, whatever you prefer, or I'm easy, or I'm fine. And that actually doesn't, give us the activities then that would really resonate for us or really bring us joy. They might be fine, but they're not necessarily the things that we would have chosen had we have stopped and thought about it. So even when people have a bad day, if they don't know themselves very well, how do they take care of themselves? And the funny thing about it is I find that, especially parents, they will know how to take care of their kids. So even for us, we've just had our kids sick this week, but you ran Tommy a bath, you know the foods that they're going to eat, when they're not feeling very well, or you wouldn't dare try a meal that was brand new to them and they weren't feeling very well because you know that that's not going to be their favourite.
Yep.
So I think by really knowing what it is that you enjoy, then on the days when you're not feeling very good, then you can absolutely do those things or add them into your day. So the way that Lenny, I'm going to have to use my arms. I use my hands and my arms for everything. So a way of explaining it could be if I'm having a full-on day. So my arm is like a seesaw for life, and it's going, right, this is us neutral, and then I go to work, and that was busy on the way to work with the traffic. And then one of my colleagues, lumps a new project on me and I've got to start that now. Bang, I'm here. Then I've got to pick up the kids from school or from sports. I'm here. So what am I doing to balance that out to make my day a bit more enjoyable? If I don't know myself very well, then I'm not going to know how to balance that out. But if I go, I'm going to get that coffee from my favourite cafe on the way to work, that's going to balance it out a little bit. In fact, this coffee that I have here, I drive in the opposite direction to where I need to go because I really like this coffee. So that's an example of me doing really good self-care. So we're balancing it out all the time so that we end up with more of a neutral day. I mean, if anything, we want to have more of a beneficial day so we can add more and more of those things to have a better balance. But even if we're just coming back to neutral, that's a better start than the heaviness of just all of our responsibilities throughout the week. We're always going from one thing to the next, having these little habits and practices that are unique to us. We can add them in, throughout our day. And again, it could literally be getting that coffee from that favourite cafe. It doesn't have to be, hours of time that you need.
And you're probably the queen of this. Like, you definitely practice what you preach, right?
Yes.
Whereas I didn't.
Yes, I absolutely practice what I preach. I'm very kind to myself. Both my self-talk is really kind. An example of this is the other day, I was looking at my knee, and as I was looking at my knee, I looked down and I heard myself say to myself, "Oh, honey, what did you do here?" It was so kind that it actually made me laugh. But then I thought of the alternative, and I thought, well, probably years ago I might have said to myself, "You idiot, what have you done?" And that would have been the harsher kind of, response. And so I like that my self-talk was as gentle as what I would say to one of our kids. Why shouldn't I be kind and nurturing in that way?
I would have been the bad example of what you said. Shall we tell the car accident story? Because that probably is a good one to sort of
highlight the difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so many years ago, I'd gone to the doctor's and I wasn't feeling very well, obviously, being at the doctor's. And the way that I'd parked, I thought, okay, I'm going to just drive through when I exit here, and I had a plan about how I was going to exit that car park. But I didn't remember that in my illness, and so I ended up reversing. And I do have a reversing camera, but the way that I was angled, it didn't beep until I literally hit someone's parked car. So that obviously wasn't very good, and I had to go and inform that person that I've hit their car. But all the way home, which wasn't very long, my self-talk was, "It's okay, honey, no one was hurt. There wasn't much damage. That person can still drive their car. Yes, that's annoying and inconvenient for that person, but at least I told him about it. At least it wasn't, a huge big deal." So I was just really calming myself down the whole time. Then I started thinking about, oh gosh, I'm going to have to pay for excess on our insurance. And straight away my self-talk went to, well, you don't really get speeding fines or, tickets for anything. So if you have to pay something once in a blue moon, that's not a big deal. We have the money for that. It's not going to mean we can't pay a bill because I've got this, excess to pay. So I was just talking myself down the whole time about why this wasn't a big deal and being super loving and nurturing to myself the whole time. And then I came home.
Well, so I've changed, right? But I guess you would have been thinking what my reaction would have been, which would not have been good.
And it wasn't
towards
good.
you.
It wasn't good.
But if we flipped it and it was me who crashed the car, I would have been extremely mean to myself.
Yeah. Can we change the word crash? It was a tiny...
Okay. What is it? A prang?
I don't know.
A nudge?
A crash sounds very big.
Right.
Bump.
A bump. I would have been very critical. I would have called myself an effing idiot a lot. And I would have ran through all of the things that I could have changed to avoid having that little bump. And I would have felt bad about it for hours and hours, probably the whole rest of the day, and maybe even the next day.
Yeah.
But I am learning from the best that the way you handle it is better, because I guess I would have felt like I deserved it. I deserved the dressing down that I would have given myself because I messed up. That's how I would have dealt with that.
Whereas my self-talk was, it's okay, honey, it was an accident. You weren't feeling very well.
Yeah.
Like it was very, very nurturing,
Yeah.
my self-talk.
Do you think people in general are more like you or more like me?
More like you. More like you. Yeah. Well, the ones that I see anyway. And just another point on that. The other thing that has also happened about that little bump, it was a bump, it did leave a mark on our car, but we still haven't got that fixed, because even the way I look at it now, so another point is the way that we interpret something in our mind creates the chemicals, and then that leaves us how we're feeling. So I could look at that bump and with a little bit of paint come off and think, oh God, what an idiot, and have all those yucky feelings. But instead I just go, oh, well, it's not hurting anybody, and I don't value it enough to get it fixed and pay the money to get it fixed. It doesn't bother me enough. So instead, I actually see it as being, that's the way that I can identify my car. So when I'm walking along, I'm like, is that mine? Yeah, there's the scratch. So it's just that reframing that I can do for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I did see a Hyundai Santa Fe recently with a scratch in the exact same place. And I thought it was you. I thought it was you driving past. Yeah. I guess why is it not normal for people to practice this self-care the way that you're describing?
I think because we're so used to meeting everyone else's expectations of us. And you know, that starts in childhood. That starts from, you know, when kids are little and they've got to meet their the needs of the group and the tribe and the family that they're in, because if they don't, they're not going to feel very good, and they need to meet those needs. And then that just kind of becomes normal as they move through life. They're always checking in with other people of what they need from them, and they're never really stopping and looking at, well, hold on a minute, am I meeting my own needs? So some of it's just habit. Some of it's just reacting to things and not stopping and going, actually, it's okay that I take time for myself.
Yeah.
So the same way that, you know, if our kids are sick and we go take that out of school and plonk them on the couch and, you know, we want them to rest, if that's you and me, especially because we have our own businesses, sometimes it's very tempting to keep working or answering the emails or, you know, still doing the meeting, but maybe having a 5-minute rest in between, like still pushing through. But what for?
Which is what I do, and probably still do a bit. And the what for, just to give the other side of it, is there is a sense of pride, and a pride of being productive and not letting the illness get me down or whatever. And
also in your case, it's also coming from parenting.
Yeah.
So, you know, we discovered that, you know, through the way that you were brought up, your parents didn't really kind of encourage that kind of thing and get you to stop and look after yourself. So that's not your normal to do that. And so it doesn't even occur to you. So many times I'll say to you, why are you still sitting there doing that when you've just told me you're not feeling very well?
Yeah.
And it doesn't occur to you to go and sit down.
Yeah.
And so I've got to tell you to go and do that.
But then I'd feel guilty.
Yeah, because
which is another thing, right? So do people feel guilty around being kind to themselves?
Yes, because they might think, what am I not doing instead of that? Like you might be thinking, I'm missing that productivity of the rest of my afternoon, you know, with what I could have gotten done. Or if someone's at home, like a mum's at home with, you know, with kids, they could be thinking, God, I could be cleaning that kitchen, or I could be getting the washing on, or they're just pushing themselves in those ways because they feel they've got so many tasks and responsibilities that if they let themselves have a break, it's all just going to pile up. So that also comes down to sometimes us being overscheduled and, you know, not really having enough time to take those breaks when we need them.
Yep. So we were talking about role modelling and childhood and everything, and our kids were sick this week, and I know you were very proud of what they were doing to look after themselves. You want to tell us a bit about it?
Yeah. So they all had baths. We have magnesium salts, so they always put magnesium in the baths. They all know to do that. We have different scents that they can choose from depending on what they want to feel. So that's nice that they can, kind of choose what they feel is most appropriate for them and how they're feeling. They also like candles in the bathroom, scented candles. So they will usually either, they usually watch an iPad or listen to a show, when they're in there, but they'll light candles and have a bubble bath with magnesium. Aliana also told me that she'd made herself a hot honey and lemon drink for her throat. That's obviously something that we, have done for them before. They all love blankets and snuggling and being cozy and warm. So they've all been, having their blankets and getting snuggly. And anyone that comes into my office knows how much I love a heat pack because I heat it up between every client.
Are you wearing it now?
I might be wearing it now. So they also like to use a heat pack. So they take one to bed, or if they're having a nap, they'll have a heat pack as well. So they kind of know all the things to do to nurture themselves and to make themselves feel good, which I think is really lovely because, obviously that's the stuff that I want them to be able to do for themselves for the rest of their lives. And it's lovely role modelling that we can do for them now, because the other day even one of your friends rang and you were in the bath and he laughed about you being a grown man in the bath. And I thought, gosh, all of us have baths. Like, it was a few years ago, our bathroom got flooded and we had a bit of a renovation, and that really...
It became the nice bathroom of the house.
Yeah. So then everyone has baths now, but I never even used to like having a bath, and now I probably have 5 a week.
Well, I can give people a tip on what the game changer was. There was 2 game changers. Obviously, having a nicer bathroom with nicer tiles and everything was good, but it was the little cushion that you can use as a pillow that sticks on the back of the bath, and then the little tray, because you can have candles, a glass of wine, an iPad. They were actually the game changers for me. And then I quickly realised that if you're in there...
you're off parenting.
You're not parenting for up to an hour.
Yeah.
You get a whole hour.
Peace.
And our kids are old enough where they won't barge in.
Well, Aliana tried to do some online shopping while I was in there. Wanted me to get my credit card details.
So it'd be harder for parents with younger kids. But once you get it, we were talking about this the other day, our life has changed quite a bit now. We have teenagers. We have that little bit more time where we can do stuff like that. When you have young kids, it's obviously a lot more difficult. But it's not to say you can't do it, right? I mean, we had a lady Ashley on the retreat who's a single mum, and what would you say to her in that situation?
It's just trying to carve out, moments that she can take, whether it's because her daughter is, occupied doing something, she could take some time for herself and do something. Or one of the things that I do a lot in the house is wear headphones. And that's because we do have a loud house. And so if I've got headphones, even if one of my ears is just sort of slightly on my ear so I can still hear what's going on around me, it still allows me to tune out enough that I'm not getting brought into the chaos of the home, and I can kind of have a bit of peace. So that would be a good thing that I'd suggest for her.
Yep.
That she still knows what's going on for her daughter, but she can also be having a bit of that time for herself. Or obviously when the baby naps and goes to bed, she could do some things for herself then. But she could certainly do things with her daughter, mindfulness things, where her daughter might enjoy those things as well. So, just because you don't have that support system around you doesn't mean that you can't add in things, for yourself.
Yes. Do you think now would be a good time to also talk about the power of no and how we've changed our life a bit in the last, how many years? 3, 4?
Yeah, about 4 years, I think. Probably really since COVID. It was in that. It was in that year. So I'm definitely going to take the blame for this. So I was one that always wanted to be busy. I would very much overschedule us. I would overschedule myself first, and then that flowed into family time as well. So when I was working part-time and had the kids at home, I would want to always be out and doing something with them. I felt like the days went faster. It was good using up their energy so they weren't so full on. So I kind of got used to just being busy and having one thing to the next. And then kind of during COVID times where things were closed and things did slow down, I started realising that I actually liked that slower pace. And it was around the time that I started getting into my own spiritual journey. So I was actually spending much more time with myself. I was listening to my own podcasts that were inspiring me, that were bringing me back to my centre, which is why I know how important that is. And it made me realise that if I'm not enjoying things as much as just hanging out with me, then maybe I don't do them as much. So I really started getting clear on what were the things that gave me energy and what were the things that took my energy. So that meant that some of the catch-ups that I was doing that were okay, they were pleasant, but they weren't necessarily giving me energy by the end of it. I stopped being the organizer of that. If other people invited me, then that's fine. I can go along, but I was one that was driving lots of those catch-ups. So I just pulled back a lot. And the funny thing is, those friends actually didn't step forward and keep inviting me. And so I started realizing that maybe those friendships actually weren't aligned with the life that I was wanting. So not that there was any falling outs with those people, but it was kind of just more of a drifting away and getting more aligned with the people that did give me better energy and a better feeling. And sometimes that can just be different life stages.
Yeah. And there's a few directions we could go from here, because I think the whole friendship, like who you're friends with in your 20s is not necessarily who you might want to be friends with in your 40s. And, you can apply that as you get older. And then the other thing I was going to say, because I loved being at home and I loved having just time out. And even when I started working for myself at home, I still like being home. Because you would book stuff all the time and I would get annoyed with you that you had overbooked us, because even though self-care wasn't really on my radar, I think I knew enough that the Sunday rule that we have, do you want to tell people what our Sunday rule is now?
Well, that was always the case.
Was it?
That was the one thing that you put in.
Oh, I probably put that in early. That was a Sunday night thing. Yeah.
So back when I used to overschedule the family, Scott would always make me agree that we couldn't book anything from kind of like a 3 o'clock onwards on a Sunday. Like obviously there might be things that are very rare that might come up that are their exception to that, but as a general rule, I didn't book anything at that time. And I work on Mondays as well, even though I'm part-time with my private practice. Mondays is one of my office days. So I really understood that. And so even now I really get that. I hate going out on a Sunday night. And I think kind of 3 o'clock is a good time to be home from then onwards, kind of getting settled for the week and feeling like you're getting that time to unwind before starting the week is really nice. So I think I just started slowing down with lots of things. We started obviously with the kids, because they can be one of the things that you can't slow down with. We have kids that play sports and they've got trainings twice a week, games on the weekends. So we are pulled in lots of different directions just from children's activities. But we started carpooling. I was definitely not wanting to be the only one driving our kids to sports. So with the kids' trainings, if they had a training twice a week, we would link up with another parent and we would take the kids on one of the nights and they would take the kids on the other night. So just freeing up some time. So some of those things have been really helpful too. So you're still meeting all the needs and responsibilities, but you're not necessarily always having it on your shoulders.
Yeah. And we've kind of also, I think this is potentially just age when we get tired, but we don't really like going out for dinner now, do we? We choose a lunch over a dinner.
For sure.
For the same reasons.
Yes. I mean, that's a definite for during the week. Like I might go out with my mother's group of friends, here and there as an exception, but that's also because I know I'm going to be home by 9:30. Yeah. So that's my rule. But I have no interest in being out late. Like I get up really early to go to a 5 o'clock gym class. So I've got to be up at 4:30 a few times a week. So I try and keep a really early to bed routine so that I can maintain the schedule in the morning that I like. So if I was going to be going out late, I'm not going to be enjoying that because it's well past my bedtime. I'm missing my sleep window. It kind of just throws everything out.
Yeah.
And so that comes back to your saying no. is by us figuring out what it was that we wanted to prioritize and what our values are, then we can get clearer with the things that we do and don't want to do.
Yeah, which I guess loops the whole thing back to getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
Because that people listening or watching might love going out for dinner. That's okay. They're going out for dinner.
Yeah.
That's just something we decided because we would rather go out for lunch when energy is high, we're feeling good, and then we can come home for 3-4 o'clock and just
chill
out. And that's what we like doing.
Yes.
But it can be different for everyone.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the very first exercises, I think it is the first exercise that we do on the retreat, is around journaling and journal prompts. So I guess there's a few questions I could ask around this topic, but first question is like, why journaling? Like, why is that important?
Well, it's just a technique that would allow you to come back to yourself, get to know yourself more, because when you're stopping and asking yourself these questions, you're having to consider your answers and you're not being influenced by anybody else because you are just taking that time for yourself. It gives you a chance to reflect on things that maybe you haven't given yourself a chance to really look at. It gives you a chance to look back on things that maybe haven't been processed properly. So sometimes journal prompts can be looking at, your younger years. So some of your childhood experiences, your teenage years. And at the time that we experience those things, we remember it as the child that we were at the time or the teenager we were at the time. So sometimes by reflecting on these things and maybe looking at the lessons we learnt from that or the growth that we had from that particular difficult experience can have us reframe that experience now by looking at it through different lenses. So journaling can give us lots of insights into things that we've been through. It can, again, give us clarity on things that we prioritise or want to prioritise. So yeah, it is that chance to get to know yourself because there's so many different questions that you can really delve into, and they can be as superficial and surface as some of your favourite preferences, just to get to know yourself around food and activities and holidays and some of those things that are kind of fun to think about, but it can go deeper in terms of your values and your qualities of yourself that, you connect with or don't connect with. So, it can be a really, really good tool to reflect on things, to explore things. Yeah.
So we have, I think I have it here. This is from our retreat. There's about 150 questions. It's just called Journal Prompts. And you can download that from traceyquayle.com. And it has all sorts of questions, like you were saying. There's lots of questions I want to ask just to give people a little bit more direction. Like, is there a certain amount you should be writing when you're journaling?
No, it's so personal. And again, this comes down to we are so unique. If you love writing, you might want to sit there and have pages and pages of stuff come from you. If you're not a big writer, then it could be just asking yourself one question. And you don't even have to write it down. It could be that you sit with your coffee in the morning, you sit out in nature, and you look at a couple of the questions and you just answer them in your head.
Yeah.
It could be sitting there and going, okay, what's my intention for today? What would I love today to feel like? And coming from that feeling space. But those journal prompts might be the thing that gets you thinking along those lines. You could set a timer and you could go, I'm just going to, answer whatever questions jump off the page at me, but I'm only going to write for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be that it's for very long. It's just as long as you have available to you. You might set that timer and say, I'm going to give myself 5 minutes, but then you get in a flow and you really enjoy it and you can turn the timer off and go for as long as you like. But maybe by breaking it down and just telling yourself that you're only going to answer one question or it's just going to be 5 minutes, then that could feel like it's a little step compared to, oh God, I've got to write this whole thing, or, it's daunting looking at all those questions. But that is just because I want it to be that you answer the questions that you like. I didn't want to give people 20 questions and then they answer them all and go, now what?
Yes. And that's a big thing that you do, right? It's all about what works for the individual.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong. That's definitely something else. So there's no right or wrong time of day. There's no right or wrong length of time that you have to be doing it for, or how much you have to write. It's all around just getting it out of your head onto a piece of paper, and it might give you clarity And I imagine, I'm guessing, but there might be times where you journal and it's maybe not as helpful as the day before.
And that's just more about habit forming.
Yeah.
And if you can keep doing that, even if it doesn't feel like it's very productive, but it would always be productive if your journal, because one of the things that you could do is not just answer one of the questions or a few of the questions, but make sure that you also always add in gratitude and, you know, put the things in there that you're grateful for. So even if your practice was only 5 minutes, but that included that gratitude at the end of it, then that's going to be a beautiful practice to continue.
Yeah. I did journal almost every day last year. I haven't kept it going this year. And I would say my journaling was hit and miss, but I always finished it with 3 things I could be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
We might do a whole nother episode on gratefulness, but, which we should.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found that really helpful. And I did it at the beginning of my day. And so that helps get your mindset a bit more positive to take on the rest of your day because you're already in that space of feeling grateful. Is there anything else that people should think about? I know one of the things we were talking about earlier before we started recording is to make it appealing.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So any of the practices that you do, if you can make the space or the setting as appealing as possible, you're much more likely to want to do that. So an example of that, since we're talking about journaling, is if you were going to do this practice first thing in the morning, you were getting up before the rest of the house, which is commonly where people do like to do, you know, some of these morning practices. So you would want to make sure that your space is really cozy. So if it was in summertime, it could be, you know, sitting outside where you've got a beautiful view. So we're lucky we live across the road from a park. So if I was to sit out there with a coffee, and obviously blankets are a very important part of my self-care and my routines and things. So grabbing your throw blanket and having that, for me, heat packs are also, you know, really crucial just to keep warm and snuggly. So just making sure your space is really nice. For people that follow me on Instagram, they've seen me go to the beach, especially during the summer. Same thing, always with the blanket. I did start taking a pillow there towards the end to make it more comfortable for myself. So even though I would walk on the sand with an armful of stuff, it just meant that when I was doing my breath works and meditations on the sand, that was so much more cozy and comforting. And that was actually the bit that got me out of bed. That would appeal to me, the thought of, you know, you're going to have the pillow and you're going to have the blanket, you're going to have the coffee. So all of those things meant that when I was laying there comfy in bed, knowing how I was going to set that up for myself was what got me out of bed. Whereas if I just thought I'm going to plonk on the couch and write in my journal, that's not very appealing.
Yeah. Yeah. Should we tell people why we laughed at blankets? 'Cause blankets are so big for you.
They are huge for me. So
Why?
For anyone that comes into my practice, they will always see a blanket on my lap. I'm cheeky. I have it around the sides of my chair and then I just drag it across my lap through the session, but I've always got a blanket on my lap. We on the retreats, all of our participants were able to choose a blanket, a throw blanket, as part of their self-care packs, and they used them throughout the retreat. My kids all have throw blankets and were begging for more throw blankets when they saw that I was gifting them to my client participants on the retreat. And I just think it's a lovely way to nurture yourself. Like I've noticed that ever since retreat and you have your own blanket, now you're sitting on the bed and you're choosing your blanket. And I just think there's something really nurturing around taking your blanket with you when you go on holidays or car trips or whatever it is. There's just something so comforting about that. And I think that's why kids have comforters. Like that's a no-brainer to me now.
Yeah. It is nice. I did get one and I really love it.
I know you do.
And every person I've seen on the retreat loves having a blanket too.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you do, which I thought was nice, is for each retreat we do, you buy way more than we need, and then you get them to choose their blanket out of. So the last person is not getting the one blanket that's left. Why did you do that?
Because I want people to feel like, again, they're choosing from their preferences. I want them to see what appeals to them. And the reason I did it actually was because when I was putting together and I was buying all the different things as a welcome gift for everybody, I thought, who am I to tell them what colours they might like or what scents that they might like? Like, that's my whole gig, right? Like, it's telling people that you're your own best expert. You know what your preferences are. You tap into, you know, what resonates for you. So who am I to then give the man a blue diary, you know? Like, so instead of that, I thought, well, if I just buy enough that, like you said, nobody's just getting a choice of one, then everyone can just have their preferences. So, we bought loads of journals with different covers on them, different pens with different messages and different colours on them, candles with different scents, room sprays with different, again, scents. What else do we have? Fluffy socks they could choose for different ones.
Yep. Eye masks, you say that?
There was eye masks, yes. Crystals, no one get a choice of those, but they all got a self-love crystal, which is rose quartz.
We'll get into crystals on another episode, hey?
Yeah, and then they got their blanket that they could choose from. But all of the things that I wanted people to have are shower gels. They had the shower gels and the shower loofahs. All the things that I wanted people to be able to put into their everyday life, and showing that these are really simple items. They weren't really expensive. They weren't really special, but you can make them in sort of in rituals that make you feel really cared about. So, taking the bath example again, using those candles, using magnesium salts, using a room spray even if you wanted to, bubble bath. You're setting a scene for yourself, like playing music for yourself as well, depending on what mood you're wanting to create for yourself. All of these things are just showing yourself that you're really important. And I think that, why wouldn't we do that? We do it for our kids. If we had a best friend that was going through a breakup or a hard time, we would do lovely things for them. But we don't stop and do that for ourselves very often, unless you're in this household, and then you do.
Well, yeah, and I'm a living example of that.
Yeah,
I never did any of that stuff, and now that I've started doing it, I like it.
I know. Now I'm going to fight you for the bath. We've got to take turns now and really schedule everyone's bathing times like we're in the 1800s.
Should we wrap it up?
Sure.
I feel like we achieved what we set out to achieve in this episode.
Yeah.
I feel like we actually did a pretty good job for our first one.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just give people some tips.
Yes.
So my tips for everyone is, have a think about the things that do make you feel really cared about and nurtured. So some of the things that we've mentioned today, the things that you're adding in, which make you feel cared about, could be the soft furnishings like, the blankets and the pillows and things when you're going to do a breath work, or you're going to do a meditation, or you're just going to curl up and read a book, anything that's going to make you feel cozy and comfy and cared about. Anything that's intentional. I think that's a good way to think about it. If you're intentionally setting up a space for yourself, if you're intentionally thinking, I'm going to have some time out, that's showing yourself that you're caring about yourself, that you're loving towards yourself. So there's no right or wrong with what you are choosing, but just anything that when you walk away from that practice, you feel a bit re-energized or calmer or more centered. So again, you can decide what that looks like. No right or wrong with how long that goes for, where you're doing it, when you're doing it. These are all things that you can decide for yourself, because you are your own best expert.
Well done. Just rattled off the tongue. Well done. Okay. Well, let's call it a day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing job. So we haven't figured all this out yet, but this will be available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, blah, 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 all that usual stuff. So if you happen to like this episode and there's a like button available, hit it. If there's a subscribe button, subscribe. You can access like the journal prompts, which is those 150 questions sort of to get you going on the journaling, from our website, which is traceyquayle.com, which is probably going to be spelt on the podcast, but I'll spell it anyway. It's Tracey with an EY on the end, and then QUAYLE.com. And then if they want to follow you on social media, so we've got Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, which is traceyquayle.therapy. And then LinkedIn is just your name if anyone happens to be on LinkedIn. I'm not sure what episode 2 is going to be. Part of my job was to know that, but I have failed. But there's lots of different things.
I could talk about anything.
Yeah, that's true.
I think everyone that knows me knows that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.